Hey everybody, and welcome back to 3COG. Today we're going to talk about the robber that got shot in the Taqueria down in Houston and respond to some of the comments that I've been seeing about this video. So before we get into it, dear YouTube, firearm safety instructor, active duty military, my tools, my property, following all the rules. Don't monetize me, bro. So not only am I a firearms instructor, I'm also a use of force instructor. That being said, I am not a lawyer. I am not a police officer, and my experience and my training and everything that I do is based towards military aspects. So I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just giving you my opinion. So let's get into it. So first things first, I'm just going to show you a 30-second clip of what happened up to right before the good guy started shooting the robber in the back. Alright, so let's break this down here. So obviously you have the robber coming in, waving the gun around, gesturing, and you know, anybody in there should believe that this guy is about to shoot them, take their life, based off of his actions, wild mannerisms, the fact that he's pointing what they perceive to be a loaded gun at their face. Right, so pay attention to the gentleman down here, the bald-headed guy sitting across from the guy in the black hoodie. So you can see people getting down on the ground. Some people are just looking around like, what is going on? And then continuing, again, pointing guns directly at people. So it clipped right there. And I don't know what was clipped out from this clip, but then you see these two gentlemen sitting at the booth. They apparently gave him some cash. Looked like the guy in the gray was basically like, I don't have cash or something to that effect. Then the robber moves over to the other two guys who are laying on the ground, and they throw the money over to him. The robber picks up the money, drops $1 or something there too, looks around for anybody else, comes back around, and boom. So here you see the gentleman in the gray present his weapon. Looks like a decent two-handed shooting stance, and then from here he started shooting, and I've read that he fired about 8 shots, mostly into the guy's back, and dropped him. So that's the video. So let's talk about a couple points here, and basically things that people are saying on the internet, and I'll address them from my experience, and there's some conjecture, so it is what it is, right? Some people are saying there was no reason for him to have shot that many rounds, the 8 or 9 rounds that he shot. And that's a ridiculous statement. That comes from people who have seen too many video games, or just believe that people drop after 1 or 2 bullets. It's just not the case. So if the guy in the gray, if he hit the robber, and chased him to the ground with the muzzle while he was shooting him, I believe that's just a good tactic and good shooting. That's what you should do. You got to shoot until the threat stops, and you can fire 8 rounds from a semi-automatic very, very quickly, which he appears to have done. All right. Then there's people who say, oh, it wasn't even a real gun, so there was no actual threat. That's completely wrong, okay? Because the threat is on the perception of the people he was trying to rob. So he obviously used this gun to try to intimidate people, so he wanted the reaction of that it was a real gun. Well, that's the reaction he got by the gentleman in the gray shooting him, because the gentleman in the gray believed it was a real gun and shot him. So the fact that it was apparently an airsoft or a BB gun is not at all relevant to how it was being used in that situation. So it just doesn't matter that it wasn't even a real gun. I also saw people saying like, well, the guy was obviously just taking the money and then he was trying to leave. You don't know that. You can't know that unless you knew the mindset. Maybe maybe the thought process on the gentleman in the gray was that, okay, he got all the money, now he's going to shoot everybody, so there's no witnesses. Like, again, believing that it was a real gun. You don't know, so you can't assume, and you got to go off of the information you have at the time you're making that life or death decision. There is a rumor, I have not seen it backed up in any way, that the guy was, that the robber was then executed by the guy in the gray, that he went up after the fact and put a single round in his head. If that's the case, that's not, and the guy was already completely neutralized, then that's not good. If he was moving up to the guy and the guy moved again in a way where he thought he was going to continue to shoot and he put a round in his head, that's fine. So that gets very, very gray area. What's interesting is that it seems to be that everybody left. Like, the gentleman in the gray left, all the other patrons from the restaurant left, and the only people who are talking to the police are the owner and the employees of the taco place. And the owner said he thinks he's a hero and thinks he saved lives. But the weird thing is that the guy in the gray left. There's virtually no reason to leave after you are involved in a self-defense shooting. There are some extreme cases, and who knows what the thought process on this guy was. But if you've been involved in a defensive shooting and you don't believe that there's any more threat going to show up, the best practice is to holster up that weapon and then identify yourself to the police once they get there. You do not want to, you don't want to make the situation any worse or anything like that. But the guy left, and they're trying to find him to talk to him. The Houston police have said they're not pressing charges on him, but that can obviously change. So in almost no situation should you leave after you are involved in a defensive shooting, unless you believe you're about to be, there's a follow-on attack, his friends waiting in the car are now coming in. Like, there's situations where it could be the right move. And, we just don't know what his thought process was. So he left, right? So some positive takeaways are the fact that, at the very least, the guy in the gray feigned compliance, where it looked like he was like reaching into his pockets to pull money out or whatever, or acting like he didn't have money, but he was listening to what the robber said. And that made the robber dismiss him as a potential threat. And then obviously once the situation allowed it, the guy presented the weapon. He used what appeared to be a decent two-handed shooting stance, and he swung his leg over the edge of the seat he was sitting on, which looks like was to be able to brace himself and prepare himself for forward movement to move towards the threat while shooting. And that could have just been a natural body response, or it could have been something that he's trained on or experienced or whatever, but the desire to move towards the threat is a good thing. Robbery like this or any of these situations is an ambush. And as anybody in the military knows, there's only one way to survive an ambush, and that is to attack. You need to throw yourself into a counterattack as soon as you can. This guy did a really good job of waiting for his opportunity. So that's the video. That's my opinion on it. Oh, there was another thing. I saw one news article that said that the robber was posing as a robber. That's just the media twisting words. The guy wasn't posing as a robber. He was engaged in the act of robbery. He was actively robbing people with a gun to make them believe that they were in fear for their lives so that they would give him money. So the fact that one of the articles said he was posing as a robber is absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, that's the video. If you enjoy this type of video of breakdowns of this, tell me in the comments down below and I'll make more. Let me know what you thought overall, and I'll see you next time on 3COG.